Hey, Steve, welcome to the NTM Growth Marketing Podcast. It's an honor to be speaking with you today.
It's an honor to be with you too.
I am excited for this conversation as we've had a couple of pre-podcast dialogues, and I just love your energy and enthusiasm that you're bringing to the marketing world. And specifically today, we're going to be talking about Market K12. So let's just start off, and if you can share a little bit about what is this organization and what's your role at the company?
Yeah, well, it's a new company. It's a startup, and I'm the CEO and sole owner here. And so what I'm doing is I'm trying to help private schools kind of up their game when it
Mhm.
comes to marketing. And so that's what I'm doing right now. It's as of right now, it's 100% a free service. So we'll see if that can continue on that long or not.
So when you were coming up with this business model idea, what exactly was going on with private schools and their marketing efforts that inspired you to create a solution?
Yeah, so growing up, I didn't go to a private school, and I didn't know anyone who did either. But in recent years, I've just come in contact with a lot of the people who have run the private schools,
Mhm.
and they honestly, they wasn't even on my radar, the private schools. But when I started seeing kind of what they're doing there, and it just shifted my understanding about what they are. My growing up, I thought private school was where the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Carlton, where he went to
Right.
school. Like that was my vision, and then Harry Potter, right? And I knew they were cliche, but I mean, it didn't really matter to me. But then when I met all these other administrators or principals who are running the schools, I realized it was entirely different, and this is something that's very helpful for students
Mhm.
and for families. And I wanted to help them promote what they're doing, and I was looking like, why are you guys marketing so bad? Um, and what I found out is that the reason they're doing it so bad is that they're pretty much not using any resources on it. They're saying, okay, if we increase our marketing, then we have to increase our tuition, and we want to decrease our tuition so that more people can come.
Mhm.
Um, and I was like, oh, really? Because in the business world, it's kind of like increase the marketing, and the people will figure out a way to pay. Right. So I admired a lot of things about them, and I thought, well, let me help them because it's not like a lot of the things they were doing, it wasn't rocket science about to figure out.
Mhm.
But I needed to come up with a package or a program that they could kind of go through in order to be successful at it. I couldn't just do a whole bunch of one-on-one Zoom calls.
Right. Can you elaborate a little bit more about what that program looks like and how you're
Yeah,
helping
well,
them?
I'm in the stage of figuring it out. So I've been doing marketing professionally for about 10 years.
Mhm.
There's a lot of different ways of thinking about marketing. But I think when you're doing one private school to another, you have the same game plan. So
Mhm.
even though this school has a different personality from that one, and so you'll have sort of a different story, you still have to have these check boxes. And one of them is you need to have a story. Second, since it's a local business, you would need to be on things like you need local SEO, like Google Maps, primarily you need to be on Google Maps, you need to be on like the review sites. So basically, let me back it up. Like the things that you would have is you would have to drive traffic to your website. Two, you have to have a compelling message about, what is this school all about? And you need to have a lead form to collect their contact information, and then you need some kind of follow-up sequence, right? And you need to have
Right.
kind of your story or brand wrapped around all that. Some people have all four of those. Some people have one of those check boxes, so
Mhm.
the program is sort of walking them through that.
Let's start off with storytelling. Why
Yeah.
is storytelling important as a marketer?
Yeah. I don't know. That's important for so many reasons, but it's telling you like okay, so specifically in the school case, it's telling someone like me who thinks of private school as like where Harry Potter goes and where
Mhm.
Carlton from Fresh Prince goes, to saying, no, that is a cliche, but I don't know what the real version is. I know what the cliche is, but I don't know what the real thing is. You need to tell me what the real thing actually is. And it needs to be authentic. We know when it's fake, right?
Right.
Uh, so it's not, so yes, the story is there to persuade you, but it's not meant to lie to you.
Mhm. Is there a brand that you think does a great job at storytelling that you admire?
Yeah. Hmm. Yes, but let me think about it, who they are. Um, I think Okay, so I admire from different reasons, right? So I learned, so Gary Gary V, right?
Mhm.
He does a lot of storytelling. I admire him for his ability to tell a story. I don't know. I have a hard time knowing if that's really authentic or not. It is very authentic in some senses, but then you're like, other times it seems like maybe too hard to be really authentic.
Well, let's
Um,
dive a little bit deeper
but
into that around authenticity in marketing. Why is that important to you?
yeah. Well, okay. So I think there's sort of two things going on, right? There's this is what sells, and
Mhm.
then this is the way I want to live my life, right?
Mhm.
So if you really wanted to do, if you really want to have a business that made a lot of money, like you could, there's probably a lot of ways, there's a lot of ways to do it, but that generally means that someone is getting ripped off. And that
Mhm.
would be the customer, not you, right? Because you're running the business. So the business that I want to have is the where it's a win-win, where the customer is winning and I'm winning and no one's really losing. And I think those are really successful businesses, or at least ones that we want to work at. So in both cases, whether you're here just to make money and you're at the expense of the customer, or whether you're really trying to have a win-win situation, um, you have to establish trust, because if you don't trust the company, you're not going to buy from them. And so right now, I feel in our recent years, authenticity has become, I think it's always been important, but I feel like it's become more important, probably because people have been getting screwed over by a lot of companies. And now they're like, okay, I don't want a faceless company that I don't trust. So I mean, it's hard because you trust Amazon and they're a faceless company, right?
Right.
So there's different ways to build trust. But when it's a personal brand like Gary V, you trust Gary V, even though Gary V won't actually work for you, right? When you get
Right.
if you know what I mean?
Right. Right.
Um,
Yeah,
so
that rings true. As we recently had a advertising campaign, and we were split testing two different types of creatives. Creatives that were from a well-produced video production company, uh, static images that looked very professional, or very candid style videos like selfie, or
mhm,
images or quick videos that might have been even like spoofs, or not the nicest edited ones. And those ones actually outperform the well-produced ones that cost a heck of a lot more money, which was
right.
really mind-blowing to the client.
Yeah, and I like, yeah, I totally agree, right? Because you're trying to figure out, I think, because our audience is trying to figure out, all of us are trying to figure out is what's real, what's not real.
Mhm.
Um,
So as a marketers, this was a discussion we were having as an organization yesterday around, especially in client services, of what someone might want because it looks pretty, they like it, versus what actually produces results at the end of the day. So as a marketer, how do you navigate those two areas and actually deploy stuff
yeah,
uh, that's going to advance the organization?
I mean, split testing, like I'm wrong all the time, right? So, and I think I'm not wrong until the split test comes back and you're like, oh, okay, well, got to give up on that one. And you try to figure out why. Um, So like, okay, so I'm at a startup right now, so there is no
Mhm.
one else in the meeting except for me.
Right.
But I work elsewhere where there's a team of us and we have an idea. Okay, let's just do this. This is going to work, and you kind of go with your gut, but then you say, well, there's always going to be someone in the meeting who thinks differently than someone else, and so the most natural is like, well, let's split test it. It takes more effort to split up the split test, but in the end, I'll be right and you'll be wrong, right? Until the results come in and you're like, oh, okay. In some cases, it doesn't matter, is what we find. It both
Mhm.
came out equally the same.
Can you dive a little bit deeper into split testing and why this is an important concept for marketers?
Yeah, like, okay, so let me think of an example we did recently. Okay, so we'd had, so I worked for a software company and we had some software review sites,
Mhm.
and we have Google ads and so on. And basically these are places where we're paying money and they're driving traffic to our website. And like, well, why is only like 1 in 10 fill out the lead form? Like we've paid for the lead. If they get to our website, they got to convert. Or even if they don't pay, even if it's not pay, like why aren't they converting? So you take your best guesses. You look at the page, see, is it working on mobile? Does it work on desktop? Is there a certain browser? What's the load speed? and you make your best guesses. Maybe it's the load speed, maybe it was this, maybe it was that. And then you say, well, at some point you don't know. And you're like, can I get this better than what it is now? Maybe not. Maybe that's the best that it's ever going to be. But you're like, well, I got to try. That's what I'm here to do, right? So you say, okay, like we use WordPress. So in WordPress has a split test function built in. I think Squarespace has it built in too. There's lots of tools, but you basically make two versions of that page, or you can make two versions of like a section on that page. So you have like the same page, and one version might have, like, let's say the form on the left and the content on the right versus vice versa. Or you might have a different headline, or the headline might be in a different color to stand out more. Or you might have a 10-second video clip that says, fill out the form to get to watch the full video or something. But you got to try different things. And then what like WordPress will do, or Squarespace or whatever, is every time it sends a lead, it'll serve up one of the variations that you have. So if you got 10 leads, 3 of them will get variation A, 3 will get variation B, and 4 will get the third variation. And you run that for, a month or however long until you get enough results. And then you go and see which one had the most successful form fills in our case. So yeah, split testing is really helpful. It definitely, I'm always surprised, honestly. Some things we debated on, thought didn't actually matter at all. Other cases, things that we thought didn't matter at all actually became the thing that mattered. So
in your career history in marketing, is you've been doing marketing for a decade, correct?
yeah.
Did you see split testing as a way to have more neutral conversations with your coworkers, because you could just say, let's see what the data says?
Yeah, like maybe like 1 or 2 times out of 10 years, we pretty much get along really well. So it was never like we are contentious in a group, but it's a fun contentiousness. We're not actually mad at each other.
Let's dive a little bit deeper into that, because it's not always in harmony as a marketing department as you're working cross-departmentally. What do you think allows a marketing department to have that type of cohesion, where you can have just transparency and radical candor with one another, and just really be focused on the solution and what's going to be the best outcome for the company?
Yeah, I don't know. Like I could tell you what's happened in ours, but I'm sure it won't apply to every situation. I worked at another. I worked for another organization where there was contention in like every situation, and that was uncomfortable. And I could see the results, and I could see how contention leads to more contention. So if you have one contentious meeting, the next one will be contentious because the previous one was, right? So
and someone might want to win that argument, as I know they lost the last one, if that's a company culture.
Yeah, or just it just bad. But so I could say that I personally have been on okay, so I'm not like the perfect person either, right? But like I realize that the attitude that I bring and to other people matters a lot. So I have to remind myself constantly, like, give the utmost respect and care to the other people, and don't try to be right. Don't try to win the argument. Like, I think it's natural for people, like, obviously you think you're right if you say something, right? You don't say, hey, we should do this. Oh, why? Because it's not going to work. You're like, of course I think it's going to work, right? But we just need to be really careful. Like, we need to be full of care for the other person and really put ourselves in the back seat. We don't need to be the champion of every meeting and see ourselves as like the greatest marketer in the world or something.
Let me ask you this: if you're a Gary Vaynerchuk fan, I'm sure you've heard him mention the term kind candor, if you've followed his content in the last year or so in his book. And say you're at an organization and you disagree with someone else's marketing idea.
Okay, I've kind of stopped listening to him for maybe a year or so, but can you tell me about that term? And I'll probably, maybe I heard it.
Sure. If, with candor, sometimes it can be super direct, super honest, but there's not much love in it. Or if you're
Yes.
giving feedback to someone, you just go straight to it and there's not that rapport and love. And so they know you actually care about them as a person.
Yeah.
And he took this philosophy as he talks about how he's not good at candor with his employees, that when he inserted the word kind in front of it, it changed his perspective of how to have those dialogues.
Yes.
So, in that regards to disagreements in a marketing department, how could you have kind candor with someone
Yes.
if you disagree with their ideas?
Okay. Yes. So I totally get it. Yes. Kind candor is right. There's a saying that people don't care about how much you know unless they know how much you care. Right.
Right.
Totally true. Um, so yeah, it'd be better in every situation, any situation in which you are with other people,
Mhm.
with your family, with your spouse, with your coworkers, uh, to lose the argument, lose the meeting, make that go whatever your campaign, make it be failure because you chose to be kind with the other person on the other end. Why?
Mhm.
You're like, well, we lost all this money and so on. You're like, yeah, that doesn't matter because if you screw up your team, every campaign going forward will suck,
Mhm.
and people will quit the job and all that kind of stuff, right? If you lose one campaign and that meant for like, okay, now your team knows that you're not all about yourself and you actually care about their opinion, then you can have honest conversations with each other, and the
Mhm.
next 10 campaigns will go great because everyone likes working together. So yeah, I mean, to be kind, I don't know, like if Gary helps by reminding himself to be kind, sure. Like, I don't know, we all have to be nice to one another and we can't
Right.
think so highly of ourselves.
I want to go back to a concept you brought up with your organization, Market K12, and it was around your program. And what I heard is it's a lot of customer journey mapping. You have traffic, and then you have a landing page, and you need to convert them to an opt-in. You have your email sequence. But I want to hear in your own words, can you share a little bit more around just what is customer journey mapping, customer journey flow? I know there's a lot of interchangeable words for that,
Yeah.
and just a little bit more detail and why this is so important for an organization.
Like you just want like a definition of like what is this and why does it matter?
Correct.
Like out of Webster. Okay, yeah. So
Or
um
in Steve's Webster.
sure, Steve's Webster. I mean, it's funny because I always think of customer. Yeah, I guess you're right. Customer journey is the whole thing. So I mean, I'm doing the whole thing right now, and I have been doing that and super interested. But the customer journey is like, how does someone who doesn't know who you are or what you are or like what anything about your company,
Mhm.
how do they go from that to loving it? In
Mhm.
some cases, like some people sell something that people need, but the people who need it don't know that they need it, right? Like, um, I watched a video on like how to do taxes, and it was all this stuff about taxes that I didn't know about, and I was like, oh shoot, I do need this stuff, but it's also incredibly boring to me and sort of scary at the same time.
Right.
And so, like, how would that person reach people who, like me, are ignorant of tax, and yet this is something that I really need to learn about? So
Mhm.
you could have that situation, or they could be like, "Oh, I definitely need a product like that. I can figure it out." But they go from not knowing to knowing, and so on. So there's the acronym of they need to know, like, and trust you.
Mhm.
That's I guess not an acronym, but there probably is one.
So I want to elaborate on that tax example as to kind of contrast two examples, and I want you to share more about the tax one. So, for instance, I'm hungry and I want pizza. I go to Google and I just type in best pizza shops near me, and I go right there. So my customer journey flow is, I'm hungry. I go to Google, I search, I find it, I drive there, and that's the
Yeah,
experience. And I bought something for $10 versus say you need a new tax team for individually or for your business. There's a lot more education that's going to be
yeah.
involved in that process. So, can you share a little bit more around when you have just a more complex product, the
Oh, okay,
education
yeah,
that's going
right.
to be needed to build that trust and rapport and likability?
Okay, true. Yeah, and I've never worked in that kind of quick transactional
Right.
marketing situation. So I guess if you were in there, I would say for the pizza restaurant, don't make your goal to make the transaction. Figure out, okay, how do you get them in the door? That
Mhm.
treat that as a lead and be like, hey, how do I get this person to eat pizza every day here?
Mhm.
Or maybe you should have salad if you have something more healthy. But okay, yeah, but yeah, I have definitely been involved in the much longer term where I think maybe half the people I talk to know that they need this product, the other half like don't even know that they need it.
Mhm.
So that becomes a lot harder. You're like, well, what if they're not searching for this on the internet? Then how do you throw an ad on a keyword that they're not looking for, right?
Mhm.
So that's actually where the fun, I think, comes in. So I think a lot of it could be okay. So especially for someone's like tax, right? They don't know that they need it, and yet this is something they should have. Then you say, well, how do you know that they need it? Well, they probably have problems with, like, they probably have, let's say they have an issue with income because they're paying too much tax and they don't know about it. And maybe they have issues with, I don't know a lot about tax, so I can't say things, but they have these other issues, right? So what I would do is you could write like sort of long tail keywords in blog articles or things like that that are the symptoms of not having this tax thing, and people would then discover like, oh, I have these symptoms, what's causing this symptom, and then like, oh, this is this thing that I didn't know. And then there has to be a lot of definitions. HubSpot does a good job of this, where they have tons of, it's like a glossary of on their blog, lots of definitions of stuff. And I think I'm like, well, why, if HubSpot is for marketing people and salespeople, wouldn't they kind of know what an opt-in form is? Wouldn't they know what a drip equal sequence is and all that? So I think they're doing a good job of making all these definitions to seek the person who doesn't know what that is, and like says like, what is an opt-in page, or what is a landing page? What is this? And then they find HubSpot and they're like, oh, okay. So I think HubSpot's doing a really good job of telling people who don't know that they need a platform like that what it is.
Awesome.
So
What is a current marketing challenge or opportunity that you're facing at the moment? And can you
yeah.
elaborate a little bit about what's going on?
Yeah. Well, okay. So in the startup that I'm doing, that's kind of the challenge right now is I'm trying to figure out, well, what should I offer in marketing? And so currently what I'm doing is I'm just literally talking to a bunch of people and seeing, if you had all the money and time in the world, what marketing would you want to do? Right. Because I want to try to make the product that people want to buy. Right. And the second thing is that what I'm realizing is a lot of people don't know what they need. And so I'm in that situation where, like, a lot of people, for example, in the schools, the majority of them are not doing any ads. They're doing marketing. They think about marketing so differently. When they say marketing, they say, okay, marketing is word of mouth. And so to
Right.
do really well at word of mouth, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just be really nice to all the families and the students, and I'm going to make sure that my current families are all aware of all the events. But they're not really thinking about external marketing, and so concepts of like, hey, you can change the Google Map pin with Google Business. Like, some of them know that, but a lot of them just don't even know that. They're not going to Google that. They don't know to do that.
Right.
So yeah, so the kind of the marketing message is to try to understand what I'm doing right now is I'm researching like, okay, how does everyone think about this? What is their train of thought? And then I got to tap into certain keywords that they're using. Like, they use internal, external marketing as a kind of a lingo that they use. So I'd have to write stuff or come off from that angle so that they can understand what I'm talking about.
When you're trying to understand your ideal customer, is this something that's involving kind of like focus group interviews? Is this, Google searching and trying to understand them, scrolling through Facebook comments? Like, how are you getting inside their mind to understand them a little
Okay.
bit deeper?
Yeah. So, okay. So I've had a lot of one-on-one conversations with people.
Mhm.
And so, yeah. So the easiest way, honestly, is just to talk to people. That's by far the easiest. So focus
But
group is great. But
let's dive into that because I've done some like business plan competition judging. I'm a mentor at this organization called Founder Institute, and I almost feel like it's a cop out answer whenever or a question where I'm like, how many people have you talked to? Because they're like, I don't know if there's a product market fit, and it's like, well, how many people have you talked to? And it's usually like zero or
five,
like
yeah.
so just dive a
Yeah.
little bit deeper into the importance of actually getting
Right.
out on the street, phone calls, and talking to your
It,
ideal customer. Why that's so
oh,
important.
it's so important. Bill, it's okay. So I think you need to do both, right? So let's
Mhm.
say you talk to five people and all five people poo-poo on your idea. then you're going to be all depressed and be like, oh, that was a lame idea, right? But if you only need, let's say, 100 customers, depending on, like, let's say you're selling something that's expensive and it's on a subscription, you only need 100 customers, then you're set. You're like, well, are there 100 people in the United States that think that that's a great idea? Probably any idea you have, you can find 100 people to get behind it. So if you talk to 5 people who think you're amazing and it's a great idea, then you can be really pumped up to do it more, right? So with the one-on-ones, you kind of have to be, I think you have to be careful. So I'm doing one-on-ones with the people who run multiple schools. So like national directors, state directors who are working with like 30 to 100 to 1,000 schools, right? Not just one, because the person who only works with one school, they only know their own thing. So if you're doing interviews with whatever, you got to interview people who say, hey, do you work with, I don't know, dry cleaners? Okay, I need to work with the person who works with like 100 dry cleaners. Maybe it's an accountant who works with a bunch of dry cleaners, or just, I don't know, someone who works with a lot of them. Like, okay, what do you think all these people would say? And talk to different people from different angles. So talk to the dry cleaner, talk to people who service the dry cleaner, and talk to people who kind of see the business from different angles. The other thing that I'm doing, and I think obviously I think it's a right thing to do, but is I'm doing a survey. So I sent the national directors a Google form survey and say, answer these questions, and they're going to send to their schools. And the reason is like, okay, yeah, I talked to, let's say, 10, 20 people. That's great. But I'd really like to have a survey of like 100 or 500 or 1,000 people, right? To make sure that this isn't just the opinion of a few. So I think you got to balance those ideas.
My opinion, this might be my judgment, when someone who's at a startup isn't talking to their customer, it's because they're afraid of rejection, and they're afraid of the feelings of, this means me as an individual sucks. It's not you, it's your idea isn't good.
Your GI sucks.
And how can you view that neutral and really just be so focused on feedback and improving your product or service?
Well, I can answer that because that was me. So I made the classic mistake of not talking to anyone. So I was like, I started this thing like over a year ago, just sort of, nights and weekends and so on. And I had this idea. I'm like, okay, this is going to be the customer journey that's going to work. And I didn't talk to anyone. I just sort of knew in my head, and I spent all this time and money making this thing. And then I talked to people, and people were like, yeah, the customers are like, I don't really want to buy that. I don't think it's good. I was like, oh, shoot, really? And I was like, so I think the right thing to do, if you are in the startup mode or you want to do a startup, and I talked to some other startups as well. And I was like, yeah, this is the smartest thing to do. Don't make anything, just write down your idea really clearly, maybe write it on a series of Post-it notes. So it's kind of like a PowerPoint, but and then go and explain that to like 20 people in real life and see if they're tracking along with it. Because if you spend a bunch of time and money and then afterwards it's a failure, then you're like, oh, that sucked. I think one thing that I had, and I talked to another guy who was doing a startup and he had the same problem, was that we felt like we needed to show the product or show the service in order to get feedback. That like, hey, I have this great idea. And it's sort of like, oh, you have an idea. Like it's not coming to fruition. You're not really credible because you don't actually have anything. So I thought, okay, I need to make a website. I need to get the domain. I need to get all this stuff going. I need to make my product. Then I'll show people. And I think now looking back, I wish I didn't do that. I think the smartest thing to do is just talk to a lot of people before with just an idea only, and just say, hey, I just want your expertise.
Awesome. In terms of marketing technology, what's catching your eye right now? Whether that's, a new software like ClickUp, whether that's AR and VR being integrated into marketing campaigns, TikTok.
Yeah.
What's on your mind that you think is really cool?
There's a lot of stuff that's cool. I mean, none of this is like going to replace the thinking that goes on with marketing and the strategy. But I think in terms of what I think is going to be really big is a lot of the AI stuff. So like you can use AI to write your blogs, which is great if you're doing content marketing. I used it and it does not, it's very cool, and I'm not a great writer, and so that was already like liberating that a bad writer could just have the idea and let the computer kind of fill in the words in between. But I had the naive impression that I was like, oh, cool, click, click, go, I'm going to be done. And like, it still took me like lots of time to write a decent blog.
Right.
But I think maybe if I was a great writer, maybe I would be writing it really fast. I'm not sure.
Are you
But
using the AI for Gmail as you're sending emails and they'll complete your sentences for you?
oh yeah, I use that in little. Like, no, have you heard of like if you go to like Jasper.ai, and have you heard of that company?
I've heard of it. It's been in podcasts,
Yeah,
advertisements, but I've never used Jasper.
there's a whole bunch of them. Or have you heard of Neil Patel? He makes Uber Suggest.
Yes. Yeah.
So if you go to Uber Suggest, it'll tell you. I mean, this is really forward thinking, cool stuff. But
Mhm.
uh, so, anyways, I think it's cool, but it's not. I was naive to think that it's just going to be a done for you thing. I think you'd have to work at it still. But so like Uber Suggest will say, hey, you're not ranking very well for these keywords. If you write this kind of content, it will. So you say, and there's a button like write the content. So you like click the button, and it says, oh, okay, okay, you put in your keywords, and it's like processing, and like 10 seconds later, there's a blog post that's targeted at those keywords. You're like, oh my gosh, that is insane. But if you just take that blog post and paste it just as is, it sounds not quite right. It needs a little bit of TLC. And
It's going to be crazy where that goes. Is I haven't done one myself, but I've been seeing the posts around the AI art where you just tell them a
uh,
concept of like
and then
a
they make it
snowman in the desert eating a taco, and then it will come up
make
with
that.
that.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be crazy where that goes with copywriting too in the future.
Oh yeah, and I like the idea of like you mean I don't have to spend hours looking in for stock photography? I can just like type in exactly what I want.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so that's cool to do. I like that stuff. I think, anyways, that's a neat thing to do for content marketing. I like Fiverr, and it's not like technology, I realize, but like Fiverr is so great for just not having to be the expert at everything. You can just really just be a
Right.
project manager. And you have to make good relationships with people in order to make that really work.
Mhm.
And for CRMs, I really do like Zoho. I think that one is really got a lot under the hood. Um, and yeah, ClickUp's cool too. There's just so many tools out there. I think that generally too, like the distraction of a company is that you try to get good at all these tools and lose focus on that itself is not marketing, and that's just all the stuff
Right.
that goes around it.
It's a fancy distraction sometimes.
Yes, a very
uh,
fancy.
well, Steve, I have one last question today, and the question is, what is the best purchase you've made for under $100, either personally or professionally, in the last 6 months?
Yeah. Okay, so professionally, the thing that I bought like recently was this mic, but it was like $200, so it doesn't
Awesome.
count.
I have a matching one as well. The Yeti.
Yeah, it's the blue Yeti. There's a lot of Yetis, but I like it. I'm stoked with it. And then personally, I got to buy my dad coffee, so that was fun.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Steve, can you share any links, social media handles, websites that we can check out and follow up with you on?
Yeah, well, the only thing I got right now is just marketk12.com.
Perfect. Well, Steve, thank you so much for your time today. It was greatly appreciated.
Yeah, you too. Thank you so much.